Okay, so what we're going to do in this lab is just basically to connect to our Linux instance. So we've created one here within Amazon Web Services. Okay, so let's find out what the public DNS is. We can obviously map an IP address onto this. So the Linux instances are tied down so that we need a private key to be able to connect to them. So this is the private key here, hopefully, that we can use. So let's go to our instance. Let's open up our terminal. So we'll store our key. Oops, that's not the key. Okay, so this is our private key. Let's paste that in. Okay, so there's our key. We'll just save that. And it's Control X. And yes. And we'll call it my key 3.pem. Okay, so here's a file. So what we're going to do is that we're going to actually connect through SSH with the private key to authenticate ourselves. So let's find out. So it's SSH mykey3.pem, and let's find out what our public DNS is. Paste. Just a minute to connect. Okay, so we can check the fingerprint. Oops. Let's do it again. Okay, so it's complaining that it doesn't like the permissions for it. So let's actually change the permissions. And we'll make it read-only. So that is 400 my key 3.pem. Okay, so let's do it again. I'll just go to super user. So let's do it again. So SSH MSI 3.pem. and we just need to add the username onto it. Okay. So we've got to log in with Ubuntu rather than root. Okay, so there we are. We've now managed to log into our Linux. Right, what we're going to do in this lab is that we're going to access an instance that we've created here. So this is our Ubuntu image with inside the Amazon cloud. Okay, so we access it through the public DNS of this. Okay, so to access it, we'll use a Linux image, a Ubuntu image, to be able to SSH into it. So the Ubuntu images are locked down from security, in that we need a private key on the machine to be able to access it remotely. So in this way, only certain machines can actually have access to it. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll create our private key file. Okay, so let's actually paste it in there. Okay, so that's our private key, and we'll call it mykeynew.pim. Okay, so here we are, there's our key. So now what we'll do is we'll access our instance using SSH. And let's find out what the DNS is. Oops. Let's say no, because we haven't given the username. So we've got to log in with Ubuntu and not with root. Okay, so I'll say yes to that. Okay, so the problem that's shown here is that the key needs to be set with different attributes. Okay, so we'll just do a change mod 400 on my key. And we'll just go into the super user. So let's do the same thing again. Okay, and so that's us in. So here we are, we're into our Ubuntu instance. Okay, so you can see there's the private IP address that we would see in the Amazon cloud. Okay, so that's the first part of connecting to it. Okay, so we've now accessed our Linux image on the Amazon cloud. So we should be able to just move around. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is to install our Apache server. So we'll just do that, so that we should have a web server running. Okay, so it looks like it's already been installed, but that would normally be the command that we use. So let's see if we can get it to run locally. Okay, so see there's an index.html. That's great, so that's running fine. So let's look outside from our desktop to see if we can access the instance. So let's just grab the DNS of our instance, so it's that one. And this part here. Okay, so our web server is now working. So we'll just check to see the home folder. So there we go. That's the message. So let's change the message to a more friendly one. Now let's exit. Okay, so we've got problems with the permissions, so what we'll do is we'll just exit anyway. We're going to super user. Okay. So let's access it from outside again. And hopefully once it refreshes, as long as it doesn't keep it in the cache too long. There we are. Okay, so our Amazon instance is running the Apache server. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and have a look in the log Apache folder just to see if we can see our accesses. And there we go. Okay, so these are our recent accesses that we've made. It identifies the browser and so on, and the pages requested. So the next thing we'll do is we'll install PHP. Okay, so let's do that. Let's paste that in. Oops. And let's say yes this time. Just takes a minute to install, and that should be them all. So then we'll now create a new file called new.php. And let's just paste a very simple PHP in. So this here is the special tags that the server will identify, and it'll run this on the server to produce the HTML for us. Okay, that's fine. So we just check that our file exists, and it does. So now when we go over here, hopefully our PHP server will work. Not quite. Okay, so let's see if our packages have been installed correctly. So let's do them one at a time. Okay, so we need the library. Okay. And that's fine. So we just need to restart the server. And hopefully everything's okay. It takes a little minute to do this. That's fine. So what we'll do is we'll test it locally first. We've put it in the wrong place. So I think we put it into the var log. Here it is. Okay, so let's put it into the right place. Okay, so we have our file here. And that's fine. Okay, there we go. Okay, so our PHP file works from outside. Okay, so let's try a few more examples. Okay, so let's try this one. Okay, so you can see this is an example of just using a simple PHP script to implement a link. Okay, so that showed us how we could create our PHP script on the web server. What we'll do now is we'll install Telnet. Okay, so let's just install our commands again. Install the Telnet daemon. Some extra utilities. And let's restart our internet daemons. And we should be good to go. Okay, so let's try and see if we can telnet into our instance. To find out what it is. So we should be able to turn it in. And here we are. Okay, so that's us managing to Telnet in from our desktop. So it's gone from a desktop into the Amazon cloud instance. Next thing we'll do is we'll install the FTP server. And there we go. Okay, so let's log out here. Okay, so we've installed the FTP service. So what we'll do now is we'll try and test it to see if it actually works. Okay, so remember we're in the Amazon cloud just now, configuring our Linux image. So I'll just copy there. So what we'll do is we'll telnet in on port 21, so that connects to our instance. So we can see the problem that we have here is that the port 21 is obviously disabled even though the FTP server is running. That seems to be fine. So what we've got to do is to look at the actual, we go back to our Amazon Web Services, and it's from here that we can actually log in and change the firewall. Okay, so here's our EC2. And what we've got to do is we've got to open up the firewall for port 21 to be able to allow that to be accessed from outside the cloud. Okay, so here's our instances. Okay, so what we need to do is to look at the security group. It's Windows 2008 is our security group, and here is our firewall settings. Okay. So that should be fine. Oops. The reason that we're not connecting is because we've actually added an M. Okay. So let's try that. We can see here that we can only get in on anonymous. Anonymous. And there we are. Okay, so the FTP service is working fine. So the next part of the tutorial will actually install our SQL. Okay, so that's worked perfectly. Now we'll create our database. Okay, so from here we can create our tables. So again, to save time, we can create this. Okay, so that's our database. It was created there, and then we create a table. So the table has 2 columns in this place, just with an integer, and we have a string of 50 characters. And then we insert into the my names table the value of 1 and Fred Smith. So if we wanted, we could do the same again. And that's there. Okay, so that's created our very basic SQL table, SQL database. So what we'll do now is that we'll then modify our code to use this. So let's use new.php. In fact, Okay, so this should hopefully read from the database. So you can see here, it selects the database, reads the names, and then it should show each row at a time. Okay, so let's go out here again and go to there, and just need to find the name of our instance again. Yeah. Okay, so got a wee problem there. On line 6 for the connection to the database. And the reason for that is that we haven't set the root password. So let's do that. Okay, so our problem is that we haven't set super user password. Okay, so we'll have a look at new.php, and we can see there that we connect to our database. We then select a table and then look at the rows in that table. Okay, so let's now try and access the instance from outside to see if we can get our database to run. Fingers crossed. There we go. Okay, so there's only one record in there, which is Fred Smith. Okay, so we can continue on and actually set up the rest of the services. Okay, so this has been an example of how we can set up our Amazon Web instance for Linux, Apache, MySQL and PHP. Okay, so we'll just exit. So we have all the usual things, like we can look at the IP address. So you can see here within Amazon this is a private address space which obviously maps to an outside address. There is the MAC address of our device and so on. So we'll just quit, and that says I just quit now, and that says disconnected. Okay, so remember when we connected to our Amazon instance we used a key, and we logged in with Ubuntu in this case. Our key is a private key and it looks like this. Okay,